Hi everyone, I am Harshvardhan, an artificial intelligence engineer, and you are watching another WebGuy YouTube channel. Today we are going to learn about variable scope in Python. So let's get started. And if you have not yet subscribed, hit the subscribe button and also hit the notification bell icon so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. There are various kind of variable scope in Python. We are going to discuss them one by one. So let's begin with global scope. I'll give a heading, global scope. Right. Any variable you are going to create in the main body of Python will have global scope. It means that that variable will be accessible anywhere in the program. For example, I will say x is equals to 10. This is a global variable. Now, another variable y having 100 is also a global variable. It means that if we define a function, let's say func1, and if we print the value of x, we will get the output of 10 because this function can access this x variable, which is a global scope variable. So we got an output of 10. Now let's talk about the local scope. Local scope. Again, I will define a function. I will say function2 and I will say z is equals to 20 and I will print the value of z. Let's call this function. So we got an output of 20 because this function2 knows there is a variable z whose value is 20. Now let's print the value of z again. You can see that we got an error, name z is not defined, because the variable defined inside this function have local scope. That means this variable z is accessible only inside this function. Now let's relate between the global scope variable and the local scope variable. The global scope variable can be accessed inside the function. Here we have did that, but your local scope variable cannot be accessed from outside the function. That's why we got an error saying that z is not defined. Now let's take another example. Say we have a variable x and it have data 500 and we will define a function called function and it won't take any parameter and just change x to 12 or 21. Okay, and we will print that x. Now let's call the function and you can see that we got an output of 21. The reason behind this is this local variable have high priority than this global variable. That's why this function have referred this local variable first instead of referring to this global variable. But if you want to change this global variable inside the function, you can use a global keyword. So what I will do, I will define a function, function4, and I will use a keyword global x, and now I will just do x is equals to 21 and now I will print x. Just call the function 4. You can see that we got an output of 21, but our aim was to change this value, this x, to 21. So let's check the value of global x. It's 21. So you can see that with the use of this global keyword, we have changed the value present inside the global variable. So from this discussion, we can conclude that the variable present inside this function is different from the variable present outside the function. It means that the variable having global scope is different from the variable having local scope. So let's try another example. Say a is equals to 50 and we will define a function func and just we will say a is equals to 30 and we will print a. Now let's call the function. You can see that we got an output of 30 because a was 30. Now let's check the value of a. You can see that we got an output of 50 because we have defined a global variable a whose value is 50. So this a and this a are not same until and unless we provide a global keyword. But remember, let's say you have a function, I will say function, and x having 100, and we have another function inside it, say func1, and it will print x. Just call func1, and we have a function, right? You can see that we got an output of 100. So to understand the mechanism, this variable x is acting as a global variable for this function. This x variable is not an actual global variable. It is having a local scope for this function, but it is acting as a global variable for this function. If we have, let's say, another function inside this function, let's say func2, and if we want to print the value of x, it will print that x. And also if we have a variable, let's say y is let's say 300, and if you also want to print y inside it, okay, so we have to call the function 2 inside the function 1. And now you can see that at first we got 100 because of this statement, then this 100 because of this statement, and then this 300 because of this statement. So recall what I have told you at the beginning of the lecture. A variable is only available from inside the region it is created. So in this region, that means inside this function, this variable was created, so it will be available inside this function. So any function inside this function can access this particular variable. So that's all for this lecture. See you in the next one.